Hello, this is IP Stories by 4IP Council, a podcast about innovation and intellectual property. Join us and you'll hear about the journeys through invention, creation, and IP understanding of our guests. I'm Fernanda.
And I'm Marta. And we have with us today Dr. Hayleigh Bosher. Hayleigh, would you like to tell our listeners about yourself and your career?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. First of all, it's a real pleasure to talk to you both today. So, my name is Dr. Hayleigh Bosher, and I'm a senior lecturer in intellectual property law at Brunel University in London. And what that basically means is I'm an academic and I teach and research in intellectual property, and I specialize in copyright. And in particular, over the last few years, I've been doing a lot in the copyright in the music industry. I have a book called Copyright in the Music Industry, and I produce and co host a podcast as well. And it's called Whose Song Is It Anyway?
I always wondered if there is any specific reason why you decided to focus on music in the last few years, um, and also how do you manage to get involved in so many projects and to do so many things?
Yeah, I often ask myself the same thing. But it's because I just absolutely love it. Like, I really enjoy my job. And I think everybody who's ever worked with me would agree. Like, I'm so enthusiastic and passionate about what I do that it's very hard for me to say no when opportunities come along. And also, I'm always thinking of projects I want to do and getting excited about different things that we can do. One thing always leads to another. So it's really just that. It's just that I really, really enjoy my work. And so I'm always keen to get involved in projects. So I did, before I did law, I did do performing arts and I really enjoyed it. But I decided to take a career direction and go into law. So when I found intellectual property law, I was like, this is great. This is like a marriage of my two favorite things, all the regulation around creativity and innovation. And I did my PhD in copyright law. So I was already kind of focusing on the creativity side. And then, I mean, I always had an interest in music and music regulation because the music industry is so fascinating. It's like this whole other world. And it doesn't necessarily talk directly to the sort of academic or legal world of the way that we understand copyright, and how it plays out in practice is so different. So that's really fascinating. And you have to understand how the music industry works in practice in order to problem solve. Because what I was finding from talking to people in the industry is, and this goes actually across all copyright industries, because I also before that was doing some work with filmmakers and documentary film, and we were teaching things in class where we'd be like, yeah, just sign an NDA, just ask them to sign an NDA if you're going to pitch a TV show. And then you would talk to actual creators and they'd be like, they never would sign that. And you're like, oh yeah. So there's this real disconnect between, or can be, between academia and the way that we look at the law from the legal perspective. And um, without really knowing how that specific industry works. So then basically I ended up doing like a deep dive into the music industry. And I'm still down that rabbit hole basically.
And I love the fact that you are trying to bridge that gap between what's the theory that the students learn in the university and what's the reality. I'm wondering whether this is the reason why you decided to start this podcast, to sort of like go deeper into the reality of what's happening in this industry related with IP.
Yeah, it's exactly that. I think that as an academic, it's you have to keep your work relevant by being involved in the industry that you're talking about. Otherwise, you're in this whole other world, and that's in terms of the teaching, but also in your research as well. Like for me, it's really important that my research is useful, and it can't be useful if I'm not talking to the people that I'm like, how does this affect you? I'm just trying to learn it from books, you know what I mean? So the podcast was an amazing opportunity to interview people from all different areas of the music industry, because that's the other thing. We think outsiders, we're like the music industry is like one thing, but it's not. It's like this whole universe of like different people doing different things. So yeah, I got to interview people from all different walks of life within the music industry, all different sectors. So some performers, some people working in organizations and companies and really hear their stories and learn about their journeys and how copyright law interacts with what they do. And so exactly that, it was a really good way. And it was also just so much fun. Like I really, really enjoyed it. Got to meet some amazing people. And obviously I love talking about copyright. So I just get to like sit down and talk with copyright about someone who actually they're the fascinating thing about it is that lots of the guests, I would consider them like you operate in a copyright industry, you make all your money from copyright, you create copyright works as your job. They don't know anything about copyright because they just come at it from the practical side of like, okay, I sign up to the collecting society and I get paid, but they don't think about it like how we think about it. So that was a really amazing opportunity actually, and it was the catalyst, I think, because that's how I started to meet a lot of people, and to get talking to them about copyright. And as I said, it's for me it's about problem solving and thinking of like what can I do that's useful and what's actually what we think in academia is necessarily like the problems that we should solve. It's not for us to decide. I think it's actually this is the way I believe you should do it. Like go into the industry, talk to the people, get to know the people, find out what the challenges are, and then see if your research can help, as opposed to just barging in with your research and being like, I've done this great thing. Yeah.
Well, as someone with a legal background, and I also specialize in intellectual property law, I think it's great that what you're trying to do and what you have been doing, trying to merge a little bit academia with the practical side and giving us like a vision of the industry, because copyright is very challenging to understand if you do not have that vision of the industry. Everything is sort of like blurred, so I highly appreciate that. I think a lot of people also appreciate it. If I may ask, what is the main driver of your career nowadays?
I think also that's a really good point that like it works both ways because the industry is a mystery to us who work in law and copyright if you're not in it. And I have found that I've appear to be some kind of translator now where I operate between these two sort of sectors and I'm like I can explain the industry to a bit to you and I can explain copyright a bit to you. And I think that is really the answer. That for me, the main driver for me is that my research is useful. And I'm very lucky that academia seems to be going down this path of focusing on impact now. And it's a happy coincidence because I've always wanted to do that kind of research anyway. I'm more interested in writing, like my book, Copyright in the Music Industry, is a practical guide that's supposed to help people understand their rights. I'm far more interested in writing that than my monograph, which I also wrote because I'm an academic. I do tick the boxes, but I get a lot of fulfillment out of helping people and feeling like my research is useful and it's making the world a better place. And I'm helping not necessarily just, there's two prongs to what I do, which is helping people understand their rights and regulation and how the music industry works. And then there's also the policy angle of analyzing and discussing and sort of researching whether that law and policy is serving its purpose and what we should do when it's not. So there's that kind of two layers to it, the sort of practical helping, this is what we've got, let me explain it to you and let me help you navigate that, but at the same time let's also constantly review that law and make sure it's fit for purpose. And that's how I got involved in some of the policy work that I've been doing.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I think it helps us from the legal side, and also creators in general. I think it's very important the work that you're doing for them to understand about IP rights, because as you said before, some people really they come and they don't have a clue, they don't understand how it works. So, how do you think your work is impacting them?
I think you're right. There's a lot of misunderstanding, and that's not just creators. Like nobody really understands IP until you do. My law students don't understand IP until I teach it to them. So because I sometimes think it's like as we can phrase it a bit like, oh, creators don't understand. And it's not that they don't understand, it's that they're focused on their creativity. They're like, I came here to write songs. I don't give a crap about your law stuff. That's not what I'm here for. And that's absolutely fine. I think that's not a criticism to say creators don't understand IP like they should. But I feel that it is empowering for them to be able to make informed decisions when they operate in an industry where there is a lot of power disparity. So they're being asked to sign unfair contracts. They don't check them first. They don't understand what these words mean. And they're being manipulated on the basis that they don't understand. And so for me, I feel like the impact of helping someone to understand their rights gives them that power to make an informed decision. I'm not going around telling them they should sign the contract or not. That's not anything to do with me. I'm just saying, let me help you understand what this term says, and then you can decide for yourself whether that's something you want to sign or negotiate or whatever. And at least then you know what you're getting yourself into. Maybe they still sign it. That's absolutely fine. But I just feel like that's where the real, on that side, helping people to make informed decisions is what's really important to me.
I think that's amazing because for me, I'm not a specialized in law, and for me, it has been quite a journey since I have started sort of like learning about IP. And I was, however, quite immersed in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and I did have like a startup a while ago, and this is something that I think it happens a lot as well with SMEs in general, and with any startup, that they put stuff in front of you and you're like, you just believe that that's how things work, but you don't really understand what you're signing, and that makes you feel very very stupid, to be honest. Like, it makes you feel like like you don't really feel like you could ask, or that it's your field. So I think this is great what you do. So looking back at all your achievements, Hayleigh, what are you most proud of?
Oh, that's a really hard question.
I know.
Um,
Marta loves asking this question.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'm going to steal it. I'm going to put it in my podcast. Do you know why it's hard? Because when people say, oh, all of your achievements, I don't think that what I think is an achievement is necessarily the same as what everybody else thinks is an achievement. Because I was talking about this with my friend who's a psychologist, and she was saying that, like, what feels like an achievement to you is something that was a challenge for you. And so sometimes on the surface, what feels like an achievement, like when you're looking from the outside at somebody, like, oh, she did a podcast, she did this event in Parliament, she did a PhD, whatever it is, it's like, it's interesting because some things, like doing the podcast, actually came very naturally to me. I'm like the chattiest person I know. I love talking to people. I love talking about copyright. It was just like a dream come true to be able to do that. So it feels like I'm proud of it, but it doesn't feel like I climbed Everest to get there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There are some things that's like probably much smaller in like an objective view, but was a challenge for me because I found it particularly difficult to, that's where my challenges are. In some ways, I am really proud that I did a PhD. I think that it was a long time ago now, and I've done so many things since then, but it was the catalyst for everything that I did. And I kind of joke about it. I'm always like, I didn't know what a PhD was, so I just kind of didn't know what I was getting myself into, which is true. I didn't know. And if I had known, I don't know that I would have done it.
I don't think so.
But at the same time, I persisted, and it was really hard. It was hard mentally, financially, like emotionally, intellectually. Like it was really challenging. And now I am a PhD supervisor for other people doing their PhDs. And I'm always telling them this. I'm like, it's hard. It's so hard. When you're in academia, you're surrounded by other people who have PhDs. So it becomes completely normal. And then you step outside into the real world and everyone's like going about their daily lives. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, one of the things I'm really proud of is genuinely my PhD, because it was really challenging. But at the same time, I'm so glad I did it, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have done it. And also I just want to mention one other thing that I did last week, which was I hosted an event at the Houses of Parliament in London. It was amazing. And it was to celebrate, it was kind of around International Women's Day, but also to celebrate the new series of the podcast, which focuses on inclusivity and diversity in the music industry. And again, it's partly because it was such a wonderful event and everyone was so supportive and I felt so validated and like it was just lovely. But also I felt like I was doing something really useful that people were so engaged with. Everybody showed up and they were like really enthusiastic and passionate to get involved. So that was amazing. But also, I think because of the challenge thing is that this is a little bit outside my lane. Like it wasn't a copyright, although copyright is linked to diversity and inclusion because obviously you're more likely to be given a more unfair contract if you are a woman or a person of color or a disabled person, for instance. So they are linked, but the focus on that event and the third season is more about the kind of experiences of different people and all people of the music industry. So that was a challenge and I was nervous. I genuinely didn't know if anybody was going to show up. But they did and it was amazing. So I'm really proud of that.
Congratulations. It's so nice to
Yeah,
hear. Yeah,
this
it's
thing's
hard when
huge.
you yeah, it's huge. It's huge. I mean, I would also definitely consider that an achievement.
So because of the clash of my worlds, there were like some research people there, some policymakers there, and some music industry. And we had performers. And one of the performers, who's also my friend, Chess Scalia, she's amazing. We're in like Parliament, right? So you have to have like, it's not like hosting an event at my house. There's rules and there's like a dress code and stuff. And this woman shows up in like, she's a pop star and she shows up looking like a pop star. She's got like a bra on and like a suit. And I'm like, Chess, I can't believe you came to Parliament in a bra. I absolutely love it. Like, can you imagine the ministers are just like, oh my goodness, what's going on here?
I think anyway, dressing codes don't apply to pop stars. That's fine.
Exactly. You mentioned that you are a PhD supervisor now, and I wanted to ask you, since AI is such a huge deal right now, I wonder if you have any, students that are currently researching the topic, or if you have any visions about this. There was the AI Act the last few days. I don't know if you had the chance to take a look and see what's the deal. So I was wondering your take on that.
Yeah, so actually, one of my PhD students, Oprah, she is actually doing her research on AI and the music industry and copyright. That's basically her topic. And she's actually in her third year now. So we've been thinking about this for a few years because at Brunel, we have a center for AI, and it's something that I've been interested in for a while. So I put out a call like 3 years ago to be like, we should start looking at this. And now we're at this like absolutely mayhem, like you said, this came out yesterday. We've had this open letter with Elon Musk saying like, everybody stop what they're doing, panic, with all the other technologists signing it. And in the UK, we had this white paper where the government are actually saying like, yay, let's let AI be a thing here. So there's so much going on. It's almost like, yeah, you need to keep updated every day. It's moving very fast. I have a lot of concerns about how AI interacts with copyright protected material. I think AI can do amazing things in certain sectors and I always bring it back to this copyright is about human creations and, ultimately, if we go back to like day one of copyright, the 1709, it's about the encouragement of learning, sharing, knowledge exchange made by people for people. And that's not to say that AI shouldn't be used where it's useful, but I do think we should think of it as a tool. It is a program that, if used in the right way, can solve certain problems. But things like AI creating music, that's not a problem to be solved. That's a saturated market. Humans are really good at it. We don't need AI to come along and make music. We've got this down. We've got loads of problems. How about you use AI to save the burning planet? Or like, do you know what I mean? There are things that AI could help us with. Making music is not one of them. We don't need your help with that. Please use it for something useful. I hear people talking about how I use that chat AI bot to write a blog post, and I'm like, why? I called it littering the internet on a podcast the other day, and I keep laughing, but I'm like, that's such a good way of explaining it. You're littering. It's like you dropped a crisp packet in the park, you've littered the internet with your AI nonsense created blog that contributes nothing to society. Like, please stop it. Please use AI for something good. Solve a problem, make the world a better place. Don't make everybody redundant from jobs that they are already good at.
Yeah, also, I must confess that I have been playing quite a lot with ChatGPT because it's fun. But
Mm.
um, I mean, the results are not great. I mean, I have tried to make the chat right for me, and I had to redo the whole thing. So I think it's not quite there yet, though.
Well, I know we're having like assignments submit students are submitting assignments written by it, and you can tell like it's not advanced enough that you can't tell. Although it's evolving very quickly, we're already on like level 4 of this thing. So who's to say how better it gets? But if you think about it, it's such a weird concept that all it does is like take information that it already has and regurgitates it. What humans do is take information that we already have and evolves it. We evolve, we create new language, we, progress as a society. AI doesn't progress in the same way. It's just regurgitating. And they're already saying that like AI is already copying other AI. So we're just going to be in this really boring world of echo chamber repeating back. And it's like the world's just going to get smaller and smaller and more boring. And we're all going to lose all the jobs. It sounds very pessimistic, I know, but I just think we should take AI for what it is and use it as a tool for problem solving. And even you said like doing it for fun. I've got no qualms with that. Do it for fun. But people doing it to like replace humans making amazing artworks and you know it just for me I don't know if I want to live in a world where that's what's happening.
We were talking about this before, Fernanda and I, and we mentioned that perhaps in the future, what's going to happen is that anything that has the label AI free is actually going to be much more valuable in the market.
Do you know what I'm already seeing on because obviously I'm looking at this in the music industry and two different AI bot things that make music where you put in a code, you put in like a word and then it makes this is the prompt and then it gives you back some music. I don't even like to say that it makes because it doesn't make anything. Everything that it gives you is just a regurgitation of things that were made by people, but it gives you this song based on the prompts that you give it. But both of these separate companies, the way that they sell it to you in different way, they say supported by real musicians, and the other one says something like human assisted AI. So already they're recognizing that the value of the AI is the person behind it and the real musicians behind it. So I completely agree with you. I think it's going to flip around, especially people like me. I'm not interested in AI created music. I want people, I want feelings, I want, real world intuition experiences. And so if I could see a label that was like, this is made by a person, this made by an AI, I would go for the person. Do you know what I mean? And I think you're right that when I saw those things, it was like supported by real musicians. This is a podcast, but for everyone listening, I'm doing like speech bubbles with my fingers because I don't know of any real musicians who would support an AI bot that replaces their job. So it's very interesting. And it's the way that they say real musicians, like you're a real human person has helped make this, but we're selling it to you as an AI, um, you know, thing. It's like contradicting, isn't it?
Well, we'll see how that plays out. I don't believe that we will replace people for creative works, to be honest. And I really hope that we use AI only for making our lives easier.
Yeah, I don't, I highly doubt that music generated by AI can make you actually feel something like a musician does, like a real musician, of course. I highly doubt that. I don't think that's going to be a thing.
Before you mentioned that you were doing this event, and you mentioned like the last season of your podcast, that we hear that it's a very special one. So I would like to ask you about that. What's going on with your podcast?
Thank you. It's so lovely to be able to talk about it. So, as I mentioned, I did this podcast. We did 2 seasons, and it was all about music copyright rights, the regulation and the operation of the music industry. I co hosted it with Judge Jules, and we interviewed all the people from the music industry. It was great. And then this third season decided to do something a little bit different. So first of all, I recorded it in real life at Abbey Road Studios, which was so cool. And doing it in person was really nice, especially for these conversations. So the topic of this season is a little bit different. We're focusing, as I mentioned, on inclusivity and diversity in the music industry, and it's called Women in Music, but that's really just to have a catchy name for it. It includes all women, of course, and we do also touch on other issues like neurodiversity and racism and these kind of things as well. And yeah, we just talk about the challenges faced by women and people in the music industry in terms of discrimination. And then also we try to problem solve at the same time. We think about what we can do to make the music industry more inclusive in terms of on an individual basis, on a corporate basis, on a policy basis. And it's also an opportunity to celebrate women in the music industry, because you might have seen in the news recently, it's, Glastonbury headline, no woman there. The statistics are appalling for the number of girls studying music at school is about equal to the number of boys. But when you come through to the music industry, 20% of the catalogue of major record labels is women. So it's 80% predominantly male. And then when you look at like festival lineups, it's like 13% women. And same with orchestras, all areas of the music industry. Like it's predominantly male dominated, and so it's was great to have all these women in the room celebrating women in the music industry. So I also asked all of the guests to name a favorite female music maker and made a playlist of that, which you can find on Apple Music and Spotify if you want. And it's actually a great playlist. Like there's some absolute bangers on there. It's so good. Just to like listen and celebrate and be like, oh yeah, women do make epic music. There is definitely not a lack of women making amazing music. That is not the problem. The problem is, gatekeeping, misogyny, and the patriarchy, basically.
One of the questions that, while you talk about the music industry, I wonder, and this is a question that I constantly ask myself when I watch music documentaries, and specifically I watched the Billie Eilish one lately, and I wonder if it became more democratic a little bit, or if it's just like it was before. Do you think that platforms, like streaming platforms, gave like a place or a stage for new artists? Do you see this as an evolution that you can actually um, quantify in a way?
It's a good question. So basically, it depends on how far you zoom out, whether you think things are getting better or not. So if you go back 100 years, things were worse. And so we can say that over time, things are gradually getting better. And all of the women said that, all of the people that I interviewed, and not all of them were women, some of them identified as non binary, but everybody who I interviewed said, essentially, it is getting a little bit better as far as I understand it. And some people had been in the industry for a long time, and some people were new to the industry. So it's good to get all those different perspectives. But in response to your question about sort of streaming as a way, and new technologies, in some ways, people now have the power to, make music at home and self-release, and we are seeing a very gradual increase in what we call DIY artists, so they're doing it all themselves. However, there's still a very tiny part of the market, and they compete against the major labels in trying to get people's attention. And the thing is that, with Spotify, especially this thing they're doing now about like receive less royalties so that you can get it's all the algorithm, and playlists and things like that are dominated by the major labels. And so in some ways, yes, but I don't actually see that as the kind of a key solution. It's not going to get us all the way. It's got for some people, it's empowered them, but the amount of work that goes into being a DIY artist, I cannot tell you. I don't know how they do it. It's incredible. It's incredible. They work day and night, and they have to have all the skills to do everything. You're not just the performer, the songwriter. You're also organizing your own tour. You have to pay for everything. So you have to have financially viable options. Promoting, marketing. Like, I can't even begin to tell you the amount of work it is, and it's I see it as a bit of an injustice, in the sense that in order to be heard, they're trying to compete with the major labels by working 5 times as hard.
Not really fair competition.
Well, we were wondering if you have any other projects in the pipeline that we should know about.
So there's a couple of things, if I may. I first wanted to mention, because you mentioned earlier about entrepreneurs, and I've also, as you know, done some work with entrepreneurs and startups, and we still run at Brunel Law School the Brunel IP Pro Bono. So it's a free IP audit for anybody who is an entrepreneur or a startup, and they want to learn more about what IP rights apply to their business or the thing that they've invented or their product. So that's still a thing. You can just email probono@brunel.ac.uk and you get appointment, because they also do other types of pro bono, but I just run the IP bit. So I wanted to mention that. And something else that's coming out recently, I write for the IP Cat blog, which people might be familiar with, and we're celebrating an anniversary. And as part of that, myself and one of the other IP cats, Professor Eleonora Rosati, we put together an edited collection that's written by all of the people we invited everybody who had ever contributed to the IP cat, and also some very special guests. We call them the VIPs. From all over, who are judges, academics, professors, lawyers, everybody, to put together. It's like a bit of a love letter to IP over the last 20 years. So all of the chapters review a section of IP, and it's like, how has this area evolved over time, and where is it going in the future? And I absolutely love it, and it's coming out very soon. So that's the thing I thought I would mention if people might be interested in.
Oh, that's great. As an IP professional, I'm sure I'm going to make sure to get a copy.
I think we are reaching the end of the chat, but we have one more question for you that we also we are kind of asking this to all our guests. What advice would you give to artists and creators regarding IP?
Well, obviously, there are lots of things, but basically it's become like my strapline or my tagline is knowledge is power. Just learn about your rights, learn about, and you don't have to become an IP expert or an IP lawyer. You should get to a point, hopefully, where you can hire someone to worry about it for you. But from the beginning, understanding what IP is, what rights you have, and how to kind of make decisions based on the management of those rights. Like, do I need to, you know, do I have a trademark? Do I have copyright? What do I do about that? And as I said earlier, and you mentioned about when someone puts a contract in front of you, do not just sign it because you're excited. I know it's exciting, and you're like, oh, they're going to invest, or oh, they're going to help me, or whatever. Get independent legal advice. It will be the best money you've ever spent.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Thank you so much, Hayleigh, for spending this time with us.
No, thank you so much. It's been because I'm normally the podcast questioner. It's so nice to have the opportunity to talk away myself. So thank you for allowing me the space to chat
It's good to
away.
be on the other side.
Have a lovely day, and thank you so much for your time. Bye bye. Thank you for listening to IP Stories by 4IP Council. Visit our website on 4ipcouncil.eu to find out more and check out the links mentioned during this episode. If you liked it, remember to share and subscribe.